Third reading by the votes indicated. Message number 314, Senate File 78, distribution of unsolicited absentee ballot request forms. Ayes 57, noes 4, excused 1. Message number 315, Senate File 80, abandonment of water rights limitations. Ayes 61, excused 1. Message number 316, Senate File 131, charter school leasing. Ayes 56, noes 5, excused 1. The following messages refer to bills Senate files that have passed on third reading in an amended form. Message number 318, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 96, Wyoming Gold Act passed in an amended form. Ayes 44, noes 17, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Message number 313, Senate File 77 passed the House on third reading in an amended form. At Senate File 77, compelled speech is not free speech. Ayes 54, noes 7, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Message number 312, Senate File 73, charter school funding amendments passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 58, noes 3, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Message number 317, Senate File 6, residential property removal of unlawful occupant passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 58, noes 3, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Let's do House bills on first reading. House Bill 200, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 200 engrossed, Parents' Rights Amendments, an act relating to education, sponsored by Representative Webb. Passed, was referred, one moment please, to committee number 4, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. I beg your pardon, that is the House Committee. One moment. Passed the House. Ayes 34, noes 26, excused 2. I beg your pardon.
Thank you. House Bill 200 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. House Joint Resolution 3, first reading of the House bill.
House Joint Resolution 3, Support for Rural Schools, sponsored by Representative Sherwood. A joint resolution in support of rural schools in Wyoming. Passed the House. Ayes 57, noes 4, excused 1.
House Joint Resolution 3 is assigned to Committee Number 4, Education. Reports from standing committees.
Following reports are dated February 19, 2025. Mr. President, Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 235 engrossed, Career Technical Education Equipment and Supplies, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Brennan, Schuler, and Scott. No Senator Rothfuss. Excuse Senator Olson. Senator Schuler, Chairman. Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred House Bill 226 engrossed, License Plate Search and Rescue Council, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Anderson, Brennan, Coop, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Pappas, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Schuler, sorry, got a re-referral. Then I'll get to you, Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request that we re-refer House Bill 235 engrossed, Career Technical Education Equipment and Supplies. It does have, it needs money. Thank you.
Needs an appropriation. Absent objection, House Bill 235 has been re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Senator Smith, You've been patient, my friend.
Mr. President, privilege of the floor.
Floor is yours.
I'd like to introduce y'all to a great American, this man over here to my right. Go ahead and stand up right there. He's a retired Marine and air traffic controller, just a swell of a guy. In fact, he currently leads an organization that helps veterans in Colorado and Wyoming. He grew up in God's country, Rock Springs, graduated in the middle of the boom. So he's seen a lot. Anyway, well, let's please welcome my best friend from high school, Travis Conklin. Thanks for being here, Travis.
All right. Welcome to the Senate. All right. Ellen, are you ready on these concurrences? All right. Message number 300.
February 18, 2025, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 81, tax exemption, property owned by the state, passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 57, noes 4, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments.
Senator French, are you ready on message number 300 on Senate File 81?
I believe so. I would move concurrence on message number 300, and urge you to vote aye. What they did with this, they really didn't do anything to it. They just added lands owned by the state of Wyoming are exempt from property taxation regardless of the use of the lands. That was in 81. Nothing in, here's where they kind of added a little something. Nothing in this paragraph shall prevent the taxation of any other property, including improvements to the lands that are not owned, such as a shed out there on a state lease or a fence, and the assessors assess that stuff now. So I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Okay. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 81 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence roll call vote, Senate File 81. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Craigo? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. 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 Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 81, 29 aye, 2 no.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 81. Okay. Message number 313.
February 19, 2025. Mr. President, Senate File 77, compelled speech is not free speech, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 54, noes 7, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments.
Senator Hutchings, are you ready on message number 313?
Yes, Mr. President, I would move concurrence on message number 313 and urge you to vote aye. I'm just amazed at the House, the young people or the freshmen over there. They do such an incredible job, And one of the things they did for this bill was they returned it to its original condition, the way we passed it out of this body last year. And I would urge you to vote yes. They just added everything back that was taken out, and I'm just so proud of them that they said yes, and I ask you to vote yes. Thank you.
Senator Nethercott.
Mr. President, on and against this concurrence, good senators, the House did exactly what we wanted, so it is in direct opposition to the Senate's position. Good senators, we've had this conversation before. What the House did is it provides an exception to the Governmental Claims Act. The Governmental Claims Act allows individuals to sue the government for 6 statutorily authorized exceptions that have been that way since the beginning of time, consistent in all other 50 states. Why is that? Because taxpayer dollars that are being paid out when the government makes a mistake, and those mistakes are limited to negligent mistakes. So for example, if a government entity causes a car crash and someone gets injured, there's money to be paid out if someone is injured by the government employee getting injured in a car wreck. So it's fair. The Governmental Claims Act is not intended to be a punitive measure in order to gain compliance of the government for things we want them to do. So we are completely upending the entire exposure of all of our government entities, all those special districts you're worried about making sure they have backfill, all those fire districts, all those water districts, the state of Wyoming, cities, towns, and counties, they have limited liability exposure that we have granted, consistent in all 50 states, generally speaking. And we are making this one exception now, outside of those car accidents, for compelled speech is not free speech. So by forcing someone to use pronouns, we're now authorizing full-on litigation as an exception to the Governmental Claims Act, the same as if the government were to kill your family member. That's the policy decision that we're making. I urge your resistance. It's not that we passed this bill out, we provided the appropriate remedies associated with that government entity without completely upending governmental liability in our state for this particular issue associated with pronoun usage. Again, I don't want to take away the importance of that, but it's not quite on equal playing field as a person getting killed by a government's negligent conduct. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else? Back to you, Senator Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or President. I'd like to push back on that a little bit. One of the things we asked our LSO staff when they drafted the bill, and we wanted to add some of the remedies for the person who may lose their job, their livelihood, which to me is important. It may not be as important as death, but having someone lose their job may be, to them, pretty important. And they said without this, the granting immunity from tort, and this is the way this bill has been from the beginning, they would not be able to file any civil suits. I don't get it, but I like the way we passed it out last year, and again, I would just urge you to vote yes. We did this for crossing guards. Yes, their lives may be in danger, but I think when we look at compelled speech, we're not so much talking about pronouns, we're talking about someone's livelihood. Thank you, Mr. President.
That was your second time, yeah. Okay. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 77 and vote aye. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Concurrence roll call vote, Senate File 77. Anderson? No. Barlow? No. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? No. French? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Jones? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. No. Pappas? No. No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 77, 14 aye, 17 no.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on Senate File 77. Okay. Let me see here. Message 312.
Message number 312, February 19, 2025. Mr. President, Senate File 73, Charter School Funding Amendments passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 58, noes 3, excused 1.
Senator Brennan, are you ready on message number 312?
I am. Thank you, Mr. President. I move concurrence on message 312, originally Senate File 73, Charter School Funding Amendments, and ask that we vote aye. Mr. President, after we got this through the House Education Committee, the LSO staff came to me and said, we've got a drafting error. We've struck in the wrong paragraph in here. And so in order for this to do what we've said and want this to do, we just need to vote aye on this concurrence and be on our way.
All right. Any discussion? Okay, the motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 73 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence roll call vote, Senate File 73. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crego? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 73, 30 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 73. Message number 318.
February 19, 2025, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 96, Wyoming Gold Act passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 44, noes 17, excused 1.
Thank you. Senator Ide, are you ready on message number 318?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Never had to do this before, so it's kind of fun. I would move concurrence on message number 18 and urge you to vote aye.
318.
Excuse me. Message number 318 and urge you to vote aye.
Thank you.
So we survived about 15 attempts at amendments over in the House side. The only amendments that were made, they were actually in House appropriations, and on page 3, line 1 and line 5, it's just a technical amendment, changed the state treasurer to the Department of Revenue. That's where the study will be conducted, and it made sense to do it through the Department of Revenue instead of the state treasurer's office. So it's a good amendment to the bill, and yeah, this is a good bill. I'm glad we got it out of there with a strong vote. And don't wait to buy gold and wait. Talk to you. Thanks, Brett.
All right, the motion is the Senate do concur on Senate File 96 and vote aye. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence roll call vote, Senate File 96. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? No. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstader? Aye. Driscoll? No. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 96, 23 aye, 8 no.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 96. All right. I believe that clears the desk. Madam Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion is passed. Senator Schuler, come on down. All right. Have fun.
Oh, I will. Committee of the whole will please come to order. This is what happens when you don't do a good job the first time. It's called remedial reading. I got called back up to do it a second time, so, and I'll try to do a better job, so, just kidding. Let's see, the first bill for our consideration is House Bill 264. Will the reading clerk read it?
House Bill 264, Central Bank Digital Currencies Prohibitions, sponsored by Representative Singh, an act relating to administration of the government, was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Anderson, Cooper, Jones, and Rothfuss. Excuse Senator Nethercott. Senator Anderson, Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure, Senator Anderson?
Madam Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 264 do pass. And there is a standing committee amendment. Could I have that read in this time?
House Bill 264, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, corrected copy, page 1, line 2, delete.
And Madam Chairman, I would move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to 264. And I would like to turn the explanation of this bill over to our resident central bank digital currencies prohibition expert, the senator from Garden Creek.
I don't know where Garden Creek is, so you're going to have to tell me. Okay. Thank you for that. Now I know where it is. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for the introduction. My colleague from Natrona County. I don't know as I'm an expert on CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, but give it the old college try here. So from a high level, this bill would prohibit state agencies from accepting or requiring payment in the form of a central bank digital currency, also known as CBDC, or from using public funds in relation to one. This bill would also formally urge Congress to enact legislation banning central bank digital currency. And just to hit on that, on January 23rd, there was actually, President Trump did an executive order to, the wording in the literature I'm looking at, it says this executive order officially banned the creation and issuance of central bank digital currencies in the United States. So we do have an executive order, but basically this bill is to urge Congress to get that in legislation. This bill would nullify and potentially a potential federal CBDC, which the federal government, at least in my opinion, has no constitutional authority to create anyway. It'd be just a decreed money, not constitutional money. So that sort of covers the first part of this bill. I'd like to jump to page 3 if anybody's looking at the bill, and it pretty well defines there, starting on line 10, the legislature finds a central bank digital currency would not provide any unique benefits to Wyoming citizens or businesses compared to existing technologies and poses serious risks. And I'll just list those risks. Establishing a direct line between a person's financial activity and the government. Easily prohibiting the purchase of certain goods or limiting purchases by a person. Reducing credit availability. Let's see, top of page 4, the centralization of financial data leading to increased surveillance and a loss of financial privacy. The collection of data inherent to a central bank digital currency, providing the means for government control of a person's financial activity. And C, on line 9, the legislature urges Congress to prohibit the establishment of a central bank digital currency through Congress's federal legislative authority. That's basically the bill, pretty short bill. I think it's probably a wise thing to do if we don't want to be tracked on what we spend and just the bank or the federal government looking at what you're buying and sort of an infringement on your Fourth Amendment rights, the Constitution. So with that, I urge your aye vote on this Senate or House bill. What is this House bill?
264.
264. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussion on the bill? Okay. Senator Anderson?
Madam Chairman, I think the expert needs to talk about the standing committee amendment and get that passed also. Thank you.
Senator Wright, I know that the bill has been, or the amendment has been moved. Would you like to talk about the amendment?
Yeah, Madam Chair, could I defer that standing committee amendment to the bringer? I'm not prepared for that one. Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Maybe Senator Smith has an answer.
No, Madam Chair, I have a question. This is talking about a federal central banking currency of some kind. This is not talking about anything the state of Wyoming is doing, correct? Can somebody answer that?
Senator Wright?
Yeah, Madam Chair. No, this is basically this is to protect Wyoming if the Federal Reserve Bank or the Treasury decided that everybody's mandated to use a central bank digital currency. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we've moved the amendment. Would you like to discuss the amendment? Senator Anderson?
Madam Chairman, I had another person that was going to talk about the amendment if the expert didn't want to talk about it, but he's not in the room at the moment. So I will talk about it. The amendment marks out page 1, lines 4, 5, and 6, and making on line 4. It also lines out except or on page 2, and then it deletes page 3 and 4 entirely because those are just findings that he read from, and they're findings that we don't want to have in the green books. So that's all the amendment does. And he reappears. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Any discussion on the amendment? Okay. Are we ready for the question on the amendment? All those in favor of Senator Anderson's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 264, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? No. Okay, I believe House Bill number 1, Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to 264 has passed. Back on the bill, is there any more discussion on the bill? Okay. Question's been called on the bill. All those in favor of Senator Anderson's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 264, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? Okay. House Bill 264 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 38.
House Bill 38, ad valorem taxation, payment or credit of penalties, an act relating to ad valorem taxation, sponsored by the Revenue Committee, was referred to Committee number 3, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator McEwen, Chairman.
Okay, we've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator McEwen?
I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 38 do pass.
Okay, discussion on the bill. Or would you like to talk about the bill first, Senator?
Can you give me 2 seconds?
Okay, you got it. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I'm undiscombobulated now. This is basically another one of the revisers, and it just takes where payments go for penalties and credits will now go through the treasurer instead of the Department of Revenue, or straight to the school districts. So it'll go to the treasurer and then it'll be parsed out to the school foundation fund. That's basically all it does. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Any discussion on House Bill 38? Okay, questions being called. I don't see anybody else standing up. All those in favor in Senator McEwen's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 38, please say aye.
Aye.
That sounded really exciting. And how about those opposed, say no? Okay, well, at least there's some in the room that are in favor of this bill. House Bill 38 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 316. Please read that for us.
House Bill 316 engrossed School Finance Model Recalibration 2, an act relating to school finance, sponsored by the Management Council, was referred to Committee number 4, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Olson, Rothfuss, Schuler, and Scott. Senator Schuler, Chairman. Was re-referred to Committee number 2, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Driscoll, Guru, Larson, and Salazar. No, Senator Smith. Senator Salazar, Chairman.
Okay, you heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Brennan? If I can find you. Hang on a sec. Where are you? Oops. Go ahead, Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report, it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 36. There's a standing committee amendment, if we could have that read in.
Okay, I believe it's 316.
Oh, 36, sorry, what did I say?
You said 36, just forgot the one.
Oh, I guess I'm not. House Bill 316. Please vote aye.
House Bill 316, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 23, delete.
Thank you. And for an explanation of the bill, I will turn it over to Senator Rothfuss.
Okay, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. House Bill 316 is the school finance model recalibration legislation to establish the select committee that will undertake the recalibration during this next interim. So this is standard legislation that we've had a number of times before. You see on page 2, it's going to create a 12-member select committee, 6 members from the House, including 1 minority member, 6 members from the Senate, including 1 minority member, and those members are all appointed by the Speaker and House respectively for their chambers. The select committee will undertake a study of recalibration. This is for a reminder, perhaps to those that aren't as familiar, every 5 years, the funding model, the school foundation program guarantee funding model is recalibrated. That means having consultants come in, work with the select committee, take a look at the model and determine whether it's cost-based. That's the mission of it, to figure out what the current costs for education are. And so you see in the C paragraph that mission is called out. In the D paragraph, it reports its recommendations back to the legislature as well as any legislation. The E provision talks about the appointment extension going through February 9th of 2026 to allow potentially the possibility of a late meeting. The F paragraph indicates that everybody who is involved is to try and participate and cooperate to the greatest degree possible. And on page 4, section 2 is the appropriation, which is $920,000. That is for all of the expenses associated with the select committee. This select committee typically meets around 12 days during the interim. 12 days is quite a lot for a select committee, you can imagine. And then we engage consultants. Those consultants will actually be hired by management council, assuming that the legislation goes forward, and then it's effective immediately. With that, I'd like to go to the standing committee amendment, which has been moved, I recall, by the good senator. And the standing committee amendment strikes at the bottom of page 2 some language related to charter schools. You see the sentences, further the select committee shall study charter school funding models in other states and offer suggestions on a funding formula for charter schools that is both equitable and predictable. That language is struck per the suggestion of the select committee, not because the recalibration committee won't consider in any way charter schools as part of the funding model, but they're basically an appropriate part of the overall funding system, and calling them out, it was unnecessary. Also, the Joint Education Committee will probably be looking at some of those aspects during the interim. So the desire by the Education Committee was just to strike that language and leave it as optional and inclusive. With that, Madam Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the standing committee amendment. If there are no questions, I'd call for the question.
Any discussion on the standing committee amendment? Okay, question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Brennan's motion to adopt the standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 316, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? Okay, that amendment is passed. Back on the bill.
And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the school finance model recalibration too.
Any questions on the bill? Oh, sorry. Sorry to see you over there. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, just a little discussion. There's an additional $960,000 appropriated in this bill. But last year when we passed the feed bill out here, there was money in there to hire consultants at that point in time. So I'm wondering what the balance of that account is, what's left in there, and then with this, how much total are we appropriating for the hiring of consultants for recalibration?
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess I too have a question, and maybe not for the bringer, but anyone who can help answer this. Building off the good senator's question, we did put in, there was money put in, and we also talked a lot about basket of goods, and we talked about along with this recalibration, talking about, I know they're two separate things, but I guess I was wondering if it was contemplated that whether maybe the education committee would work on that and recal would work on recalibration, or if there would be some sort of hand-in-hand discussion, or is that just off the table? Because I know there's been a lot of discussion about that in this room, and I'm just trying to get it clear in my head. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It is my understanding, to the good senator from Carbon County, I will double check this, but it is my understanding that the $920,000 is the entire expense, even though the feed bill includes a carryover appropriation for the ongoing litigation fund. In the past, we've used those funds to fund this, so we've sometimes appropriated for recalibration out of that fund. In this instance, it's a general fund appropriation. That fund that is in the feed bill as that sub-account is a continuous appropriation for litigation purposes, and it would be unaffected by this. That's my understanding. I will double check, though, to make sure that's accurate with staff. And Madam Chairman, with regard to the basket of goods, the basket of goods is certainly part and parcel to the consideration for the recalibration, because it is a request during the recalibration to figure out what the cost of providing the basket of goods is in a cost-based model. So in some years, we've revisited that. We've talked about it in depth. In other years, we have chosen to basically just say, go with what we've got and give us an update. And either of those could be done this year. The select committee could decide, leadership could decide how in-depth they want it. So that is certainly open for discussion, as well as the Joint Education Committee could come back and make that decision as well. Any of the above is an option on the table if there is a desire to look at the basket of goods. And for those that might not be familiar, we have in statute a couple of sets of Romanettes that we refer to as the basket of goods, and those are what we contemplate as being the required topic areas for education in the state of Wyoming. It includes things like mathematics, English. It used to include typing, but it doesn't any longer. But things along those lines, Madam Chairman, and we can get a statutory reference for that if desired.
Senator Driscoll?
Madam Chairman, thank you. Back to the basket of goods. How many years has it been since we actually opened up the basket of goods and just looked at base up, looking at what the basket of goods is and what it does?
Senator Rothfuss might have an idea.
Madam Chairman, if nobody else is standing, I recall looking at it about 3 times, and one time we specifically amended it to add computational thinking and computer science. The other times we looked at it, and we talked about it, and then we didn't make any changes to it based on a recognition that nobody seemed to think there was anything particularly you'd change about the list. Again, it's always open to be looked at and changed, but again, if you take a look at the list, we talk about it as if it's a magical list that is exhaustive and inclusive of so many things that we could start chopping things off. But both times we've taken a look at it and reflected on it, you look at the list and you're like, yeah, mathematics, science, social studies, it's not as elusive and mysterious of a list as I think we tend to treat it. So other than changing it for the purpose of striking what was, I think it was called keyboarding, we crossed it off and we added in computational reasoning or computational thinking, computer science basically. Added that in. We were the first state, Madam Chairman, to add computer science to our basket of goods. That is the only change I recall in my 15 years on the committee.
Any other discussion on House Bill 316? Okay. I think you're ready for the question. All those in favor of Senator Brennan's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 316, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay. House Bill 316 has passed the committee of the whole. Senator Landon.
Madam Chairman, may I have privilege of the floor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Fellow senators, if you look in the balcony, there's a really sharp-looking group upstairs, and they are the 2025 Leadership Casper class down here to visit the Capitol today. I hope you would join me in welcoming them to the Senate. Madam Chairman, several future senators up there, I think, looks like.
Senator Barlow? Oh, you were just taking a long time to, okay, sit down. Gotcha. All right, well, welcome. Thanks for coming to visit the upper chamber. Senator Hutchings? Oh. Oh, you're getting ready to testify on the bill, okay.
Yeah.
Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 42. Please read it.
House Bill 42 engrossed, Regulation of Surgical Abortions, an act relating to public health and safety, sponsored by Representative Lawley. It was referred to Committee Number 10, which turned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Aye, Senators Barlow, Crum, Hutchings, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Scott. Senator Barlow, Chairman.
Okay, for the reading of the bill, what is your pleasure? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report and do so if it do pass the recommendation of House Bill 42. And Madam Chairman, there is an amendment, but it's a Committee of the Whole amendment, so I'll turn the explanation of the bill over to Senator Hutchings. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that. Now the good part of the afternoon is about to start. In June 2022, the United States Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling overturning Roe v. Wade in the case of Dobbs versus Jackson, Wyoming's Health Board. The court concluded that the U.S. Constitution does not grant the right of an abortion, and therefore each state has the right to decide on matters relating to abortion in their state. In 2023, we passed a law prohibiting abortions in Wyoming with limited exceptions. However, most of you know that the Wyoming law prohibiting abortion has been stayed pending rules of a district court, and now during the appeal of the Wyoming State Supreme Court. As a result, abortion remains legal in Wyoming. As long as abortion remains legal, we have the responsibility to protect the health and safety of women getting abortions. And House Bill 42 provides for basic common sense regulations for surgical abortions to protect the health and safety of women who choose to get a surgical abortion. House Bill 42, first and foremost, requires that each surgical abortion facility in Wyoming be licensed as an ambulatory surgical center in accordance with Wyoming Statute 35-901 through 914. There is no question that surgical abortion is the same type of medical procedure as other ambulatory surgeries. The current definition of ambulatory surgery center is a facility that provides surgical treatment to patients not requiring hospitalization and is not part of a hospital or office of private physicians, dentists, or podiatrists. This bill amends this definition to add ambulatory surgical center shall include any surgical abortion facility, and that's on page 9. House Bill 42 also requires that surgical abortions be performed by doctors licensed in Wyoming, and that those doctors have admitting privileges at a hospital within 10 miles of the surgical abortion facility. This is to provide continuity of care for the health and safety of women in the event of a botched abortion. Continuity of care is essential in such situations to address the unexpected medical issues in a timely and effective manner. This bill also requires reporting of surgical abortions and a statement that the abortions were performed by a licensed doctor in Wyoming. The bill includes penalties for violating the provision of the law, varying from misdemeanors, fines of $1,000 to a felony of not less than 1 year and no more than 14 years in prison for doctors not licensed in Wyoming from performing surgical abortion in Wyoming. In conclusion, House Bill 42 provides for a typical set of health and safety standards for this type of medical procedure. 23 other states have adopted similar common sense health and safety regulations. For that, I stand for questions. We kind of went through the bill as I spoke, And one of the things that stands out to me, Madam Chair, is with this legislation, I think we all have knowledge of what happened out in a state to the east of us. A doctor was found to have very unsanitary operations, untrained staff. He used powerful drugs without proper medical supervision. His place was filthy, deplorable, disgusting, very unsanitary, very outdated, horrendous, and by far the worst that these experienced investigators have ever encountered. I'm not saying that that's going to happen here in Wyoming, but with this bill, we're trying to prevent that. And with that, I'll sit for questions. If someone wants me to go through the bill line by line instead of by what I said, that's fine too. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Questions on the bill? Okay. We do have a couple of amendments. Let's go ahead and go with the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. Has that been read in? Would you please read that in?
House Bill 42, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, lines 7 through 22, delete.
Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 42 and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow Senators, this is something that the sponsor of the bill brought to us after the committee hearings. We needed to true up on some of the definitions in this bill, other bills, some of the statutes we have on the books, Madam Chairman. So this isn't a substantial change. We're just deleting page 2, lines 7 through 22, and page 3, lines 1 through 7, and inserting this language because it is conforming to all the other statutes that we have on the books. So with that, I'd stand for questions or call for the question.
Any discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1? Okay, question's being called. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion to adopt the Standing Committee, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 42, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Okay, that Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 42 has passed. We do have another Committee of the Whole Amendment. Would you read that in?
House Bill 42, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, page 5, line 2, after.
Okay, Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 42 and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow Senators, this is just another true-up that the sponsor wanted after committee, after we had asked some questions. So on page 5, line 2, after the word woman, we're going to delete the rest of the lines on 3 through 6 and just put a period after woman. The reason being is this exemption was actually aimed at doctors, clinics that might be doing this, but they are not a surgical abortion facility. They are a doctor's office, and they perform some of the ultrasound procedures and things contemplated in this bill. So we're just tightening up that language to take that out because we weren't intending to capture them in this bill.
Discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2? Any discussion? Okay, all right. Sounds like we're ready for the question. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to House Bill 42, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, that Committee of the Whole number 2 amendment to House Bill 42 has passed. Back on the bill. Any more discussion on the bill? Senator Driscoll?
Madam Chairman, I've got a couple questions. One, who pays for the ultrasound? Is it going to be the female, or is it the state, or is it the doctor provides it for free? Also, other states that have this, it was mentioned that there's numbers of other states. The other states that do this, do they all do it at immediately upon implantation, or do they do it at some stage later on?
No,
point of order.
we're not on the ultrasound bill yet.
I am sorry.
Oh.
I'm on the wrong bill. What's
Okay,
new?
that's all right. It happens. I believe Senator Guru is up. Okay.
That's me.
Senator Drew.
Hey, don't worry, it's never happened to me.
only like yesterday or the day before. I want to ask the bringer of the amendment, she talked about a state to the east where this has occurred with these deplorable conditions. Is this state to the east a state where reproductive rights have been suspended? Are we, where are we at this state where this is happening? And I guess it leads me to a point, and I see the penalty phases. I just, once again, trying to understand, I think I understand what we're trying to do here, but once again, when we have a doctor shortage, we're trying to get medical people here. I know we're not trying to get ones that work in those kind of conditions, but once again, we're making doctors, this is misdemeanor, but I heard 1 to 14 years in jail. So if we could just have a little discussion about what's going on in that state back east that gave rise to this, and then about this more penalties for doctors.
Senator Landon?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, thank you. I had a similar question, which was just regarding that felony provision in the bill and up to 14 years in prison. I wonder, and maybe some of those in the legal profession can help me understand if that's parallel to what we normally would apply in similar circumstances. That just seems like quite a penalty in this bill. So, thank you.
Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Once again, I'm curious about how this is structured with regard to one specific type of surgery and creating an entire scaffold of laws and regulations around that. I do understand, Madam Chairman, that the overarching desire is just to get rid of abortion, to make it as challenging, inhumane, difficult, burdensome as is possible, and stack on as many negative structures in our legislation to put a burden on any woman that might make this choice. But to the extent that it's still legal in Wyoming, which was pointed out, and to the extent that the purported concept of this is to protect women, I guess what I'm failing to understand is what is unique about an abortion surgery that doesn't apply to all of the other surgeries that would take place at an ambulatory surgical center. If it's appropriate that somebody at the ambulatory surgical center have capacity to operate at a nearby hospital within 10 miles, why wouldn't that be true of somebody that was conducting a hernia operation, as an example? I don't understand what the new complexity is for an abortion surgery relative to surgeries that an ENT might do at one of these centers. Or a gallbladder surgery. I had one a short time ago. Good times, I gotta tell you, I recommend it. Give it my full thumbs up. That was a surgery that could have complications. And if you need admitting privileges for a complicated surgery within 10 miles, why aren't we saying that that is the appropriate, healthy policy for all surgeries that take place at an ambulatory service center? Because what it looks like is that we're specifically targeting one particular surgery to make it burdensome, and that's why the statute is structured this way. Targeting a particular need as opposed to the purported motivation, which is trying to protect women's health. If this is legislation that, in fact, by some data somewhere would protect women's health, I feel like we should apply it to all surgeries. I feel like we should apply it to every surgery that takes place at an ambulatory surgical center. We need to make sure every one of those doctors has admitting privileges at a hospital within 10 miles. Let's implement that right away, and let's see how the people of the state of Wyoming like it. Because there really aren't a lot of locations where this could possibly happen. We have very few hospitals in the state of Wyoming. And we would basically rule out rural health. Try saying that 5 times in a row. So, again, perhaps a little more discussion on why this particular surgery needs criminal penalties in statute associated with the misapplication of it. But my gallbladder surgery really just doesn't need to be in the green books at all. and shouldn't be, Madam Chairman.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Let's see if we can take some of those comments. And it's important to understand the differences, maybe not so much in the green books, but the way that this is playing out on the ground in our state currently. It's been my understanding that there's one surgical abortion center that does not use Wyoming doctors, Madam Chairwoman. Last I checked, they have to fly people in from out of state. They come, they perform the procedure once or twice a week, 1 or 2 days out of the week, then they go home. So there's no continuity of care, not just because they don't have any admitting privileges, but because they're here one day, gone the next. So to compare it to your more regular doctor setups, it's just, I think that's accurate. We're responding to what we see on real life right now, today, where we have what I would describe as a fly-by-night operation, pick the middle part of our state because it happens to be in a certain geographical area in our nation, which they think is an abortion desert. So that's what we're dealing with right now in central Wyoming. It's not your regular doctor updates where you're gonna go get a surgery. That's the reason for the differences, why this is being treated differently. And that's why we're having an increased penalty, because it isn't the same as your Wyoming doctors. And that's also, I think that gets partially to the concern of my colleague from Teton County. These are not Wyoming doctors that are performing these surgeries. So we may be making it more difficult for somebody out of state to do business here. And that's okay, given the inherent risks with the operation. So I hope that helps.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, so it's out-of-state doctors that are the problem. That's helping me. Now I understand. So why isn't the legislation written to apply to all out-of-state doctors, for example, those that do gallbladder surgery? That would make great sense, right? Let's make sure that we only have Wyoming doctors operating in Wyoming. I had a good conversation with the good senator from Star Valley a short time ago. He told me a story about how his local hospital was actually flying in doctors from western states of the country. And it was exceptional because they had top quality care from these out-of-state doctors that were world-class. They'd come in 1 day a week, fly-by-night operation though, because I assume they're flying at night as they're coming into town. World-class doctors, top-notch healthcare, western part of the state, performed because we have out-of-state doctors that are willing to come in. Now, Madam Chairman, I think about this legislation and I think about this passionate urge to make sure that we're only using local doctors, and then I think about surgical abortions, and I wonder why we don't have any surgical abortion doctors in the state of Wyoming. After all of the legislation trying to criminalize that activity, I would imagine that most abortion doctors would want to sneak into the state of Wyoming and then get the heck out of the state of Wyoming as quickly as they possibly can so they don't end up in jail. So again, how is this helping healthcare? How is this helping women? How is this creating freedom and better access in the state of Wyoming, as opposed to doing everything we possibly can to discourage and make it difficult for women to have a legal surgery in the state of Wyoming? And again, if it is just about out-of-state doctors, why isn't that what this bill is about? It would be very easy to structure a piece of legislation that made it clear that doctors had to have admitting privileges at hospitals, have in-state licensing and residency, and do everything that was described so that my gallbladder surgery, which is, from a healthcare standpoint, functionally equivalent in complexity to an abortion or to a hernia operation, or to other standard surgeries that can take place at one of these ambulatory surgical centers. It still looks very pointedly discriminatory towards one particular aspect of healthcare for political purposes, Madam Chairman.
Other discussion on the bill? Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. If we are discriminatory in this, it would be that we're discriminatory in the opposite direction, because what is in here asking a physician to be licensed, to be in good standing with the state, to have admitting hospital privileges, perform surgeries at an ambulatory surgical center? Madam Chairwoman, those are things that we require of all other types of major surgeries and even minor surgeries within the state. And so we're just asking for the safety of women so that these are done in the same standards that all of our other surgical procedures are done in.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the good comments, and I understand the good senator from the Ivory Tower's frustration. But yeah, there are people in here that want to end abortion, but if we're going to have legal abortions, we're going to try to make them as safe as possible. The bill is pretty clear cut. Nobody is trying to prevent anybody's reproductive rights from being denied. And with that, Madam Chair, it's just so simple. If people would read the bill, see what it's about, and if the good senator from the Ivory Tower wants something to protect his gallbladder and hernia surgeries, make sure that they have the same protections as this bill. I would say it would be wonderful if he can bring a bill next year, and maybe I'll sign on with him. But for now, I ask for the question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess I'm still confused a little bit about, so we're trying to make it safer, and we're going to provide a penalty if they're not safe. Does the medical society, I guess I'll bring the bringer, does the medical society do anything about this? Aren't they the folks that are supposed to be policing this? I'm glad that we're trying to make it safe. I'm glad, I think, that that sounds good. But this part about making doctors felons again, it just seems to me that, at some point, we need to say, we really don't want doctors here, because if we keep doing bills that make them felons, that is the result we're doing, so we should stop messing around with it. But like I say, maybe I got it all wrong, and the medical society's just not doing their job, they're falling down, and we need to have a chat with them. But I'd just like to hear some discussion about that.
Any other discussion on this bill? Oops, hang on. How about we go Senator Rothfuss, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to go to one of the previous points where the suggestion was that we're just using the same standards as for other types of surgeries. I'd like citations from the Green Book where other surgeries have these same types of standards. So where do we have those provisions? Because it was my understanding that the only surgeries that we mention in the Green Books are abortion. That every other surgery we actually leave up to the medical boards, the professionals that are expert in this space and are literally swear oaths to uphold healthcare, and that we tend to leave it up to them for every other type of surgery. And Madam Chairman, I understand nobody in here wants this debate to continue. Nobody wants it. But we keep bringing these bills, and this is an important debate. And if you don't want to hear the debate, maybe we need fewer bills on this particular topic. It would be refreshing to just hear perhaps an admittance that this has nothing to do with women's health. It's not about that. The bill is not about that. It's not the intent. The intent is to make it harder to have abortions when they're currently legal. That would be refreshing. But if we're going to call it healthcare, and if we're going to pretend that this is about women's health with relation to surgical abortions, then let's try and debate science and fact. Let's see where in statute we have other provisions related to the regulation of surgery so that we can make surgery healthier for men, women, children around the state. Where is that in the Green Book? Because I haven't read that anywhere. And how is it that for specifically abortion-related surgeries, we should put this in the Green Book, but nobody ever thought of adding it for all the rest of the surgeries? If, again, this is scientifically valid and the medical community supports. And then the last point, Madam Chairman, is exactly that. Does the medical community support this bill? Because I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that every major medical community in the state of Wyoming strongly opposes this bill as an infringement upon the healthcare rights of women. So, perhaps answers to those questions, and maybe I'll have a few more, Madam Chair.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know we trip over ourselves to get to these, and and we want to make sure that we expedite whatever we stand up and say about them, because we want to get to the question, you know. But, you know, I just heard in the debate this afternoon that this apparently is targeting a facility in my community. And then I heard that really, well, what it is it's a fly-by-night facility because we're flying doctors in. Well, I got news for you, folks. We're flying doctors in all over the state of Wyoming these days. That's the new model. We fly them into the center part of the state, not just in my community, but downriver at a hospital down there. They fly in from the state south of us. These things have consequences, not just for the protection of our women, and thank God we've got a state government that's going to protect the women in my family. That helps me sleep at night. I'm just getting fatigued on all of this, and I don't think that we're giving enough thought to what we're doing to our medical community out there. We spend millions of dollars, and then we bring them in up on the balcony to introduce all of those new doctors who are expected to come back to our state and work for us. And what we're doing here is making them think twice or three times before they come back. They sure as heck aren't going to be in women's health, I'll tell you. 2 weeks ago, a senator from across the room asked, well, where are the doctors going? Why are they leaving? This is why they're leaving, Madam Chairman. So I agree with the senator from Albany County. I know we don't want to debate this stuff. We had leadership Casper sitting up there. We don't want to talk about this in front of people, but this is the only chance we've got. This is it. This is committee of the whole on a bill that frankly isn't a very good bill. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Further discussion, or are you ready for the question? Okay. All those in favor of Senator Barlow's motion that when the committee of the whole rises report, they do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 42, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. Okay. House Bill 42 is passed, committee of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 64. Oh, you want division? Okay. All those in favor of this bill, please rise. All those opposed, please rise. Okay, the vote is 23 yes and 6 no, so House Bill 42 has passed the committee of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 64. Will you please read the the bill?
House Bill 64 engrossed. Chemical abortions ultrasound requirement. An act relating to abortion sponsored by Representative Nyman. Was referred to committee number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Crum, Hutchinson, Steinmetz. No, Senator Scott. Senator Barlow, Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Barlow?
Madam Chairman, I move in the committee of the whole rise report and do so with a do pass recommendation on House Bill 64, chemical abortions ultrasound requirement. There are no standing committee amendments. I turn over the explanation bill to Senator Steinmetz. Thank you.
Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Mr. Chairman, for the introduction of this bill. Today I bring you chemical abortions ultrasound requirement, and the bill does just what the title says. Basically, the performance of an ultrasound is the standard of care for any proposed obstetrical or gynecological procedure. It is the acceptable standard of care to obtain an ultrasound evaluation of the pregnancy before any performing any significant medical or surgical procedure on a pregnant woman. It is essential to know the location of the pregnancy, the estimated gestational age, and whether the unborn child has a cardiac activity. It is also necessary to rule out uterine abnormalities, and an ultrasound is most accurately provides this information. It confirms a viable pregnancy, it confirms that the pregnancy is not ectopic, and it verifies gestational age, which is very important in the case of chemical abortions, because they are only FDA approved up to 10 weeks of pregnancy. Anything above that can cause problems for the woman that is carrying the child, Madam Chairman, and so that is the impetus for this bill. Many times, abortion chemical drugs can be obtained through the mail, and that can cause a problem for women who don't know the gestational age of their pregnancy. And so this bill seeks to take care of that by requiring an abortion, 48 hours, an ultrasound before a chemical abortion. So basically, if you go to the bill, on the bottom of page 3, that's where the requirement is that not less than 48 hours before a pregnant woman procures the drugs or substances for a chemical abortion, or before a physician or pharmacist dispenses the drugs, which there will be an amendment there to broaden that up to the medical provider. They need to receive an ultrasound, and the ultrasound is not prescribed in this bill what it must be, Madam Chairman. It just says it shall be the quality consistent with a standard of medical practice in the community. And really, the gestational age and what the doctor is able to do, or the ultrasound technician, whomever is performing that, they would have to prescribe what ultrasound is needed to appropriately ascertain the gestational age for the pregnancy. And so with that, Madam Chairman, that's pretty much the bill. And it would just require that before those drugs are dispensed, and they would have to see a physician to get those. I know there is 3 committee of the whole amendments. The first one is not mine. And so I would stand for questions on the bill, or you can go through the amendments, whichever you prefer.
Would you like to discuss the bill first? Looks like Senator Guru does.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we could, maybe have a little discussion about page 5, about the penalty section on this one. Maybe we could just talk about that for a second, have the good bringer take us through the penalty phases in this.
Senator Hutchings.
Madam Chair, this was to just answer the question the previous senator asked on the bill before, who's going to pay for this? We have life choice pregnancy centers throughout the state, and they'll do it for free. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Steinmetz?
Madam Chairman, that is the penalty in the bill, because it is could really harm someone's life, and so that is the penalty included in this bill.
Other discussion on the bill? Okay, with that, let's go ahead and we'll come back to that. And let's go ahead and move our first committee of the whole, have that read in.
House Bill 64, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 4, line 8 after.
Okay, Senator Crum, I believe this is yours.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Do I need to move the bill?
Yes, please.
Yes, I'd move amendment number 1, House Bill 64.
Committee of the Whole, Committee of the Whole, number 1.
Committee of the Whole, number 1. Thank you.
You're good.
House Bill 64. And what this amendment is, when we were in committee hearings, we heard a lot about this bill from many different people, but the one thing that we heard constantly in the committee was transvaginal ultrasounds, how they were invasive, how they hurt people, and a lot of concern. That came up over and over again. I then went after the committee, visited with several medical providers about this procedure, and unanimously they said the topical ultrasound that I'm sure many of us have seen covers what needs to be done as far as the things we've heard about viability and do you have frontal lobe development and those type of things with the ultrasound. So my amendment is very simple, not to require a transvaginal ultrasound unless expressly requested by the pregnant woman. Again, I think this bill is to check viability of life and protect life of an unborn child. It's not to hurt or embarrass someone. So I would highly recommend the approval of this amendment.
Okay, discussion on committee of the whole, amendment number 1. Oh, sorry. Hard to see you over there.
I'm the one spot that can't be seen in that chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman. I got to push back a little bit on this amendment and urge us to not adopt this amendment. And I would say that maybe some of the information that was told to the bringer of the amendment might not be exactly accurate. The truth, or what I know from both having worked in the area of this area and having had ultrasounds done, is that sometimes you cannot, in those early times of pregnancy, get with the, now I'm gonna lose the word, but the top ultrasound, an abdominal ultrasound, you cannot see, especially if you're looking at like an ectopic pregnancy, which would be important for a physician to know for the safety of the mother. Is a transvaginal ultrasound a little bit more invasive? Yes, it can be, but there are times that you cannot find, especially depending on where the baby has implanted, where at in the uterus it is. It's normally the embryos will implant in the back of the uterus, but if it's too low or off to the side, it can't be seen in those early stages of life on a abdominal ultrasound, and you really do have to have a transvaginal ultrasound. So by putting this in and saying that it has to be requested, we're not gonna always get the information that is needed by the provider. So I just ask that we maybe pause on this amendment.
Other discussion? Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the intent of the amendment to try to provide and alleviate the suffering that would go along with a mandatory transvaginal ultrasound that the bill currently has. So I'm appreciative of trying to get there. But the good senator from here in Laramie County is absolutely right. If the purpose is chemical abortions, that's typically the first 10 weeks, and the standard of care for the first 10 weeks is going to be a transvaginal ultrasound. Oftentimes, an abdominal ultrasound can't even detect a pregnancy until 7-8 weeks. So this, again, the standard of care is the transvaginal ultrasound under these conditions. And Madam Chairman, that's one of the biggest concerns I have with the legislation. We'll get back to that when we debate the bill, but regrettably, you can't achieve the interests that this bill lays out without forcing a woman to have a transvaginal ultrasound. And therefore, the amendment really doesn't achieve the regrettable interest of the bill.
Other discussion on this amendment? Okay, go ahead, Senator Crum.
Yeah, just to bring us home here really quick. Again, I'm not a licensed provider. All I did is talk to licensed providers that told me that. So, that's all I can go on. And again, without being pointed, but the deal is to preserve life, not stick it to women. So I would vote, encourage you to vote yes.
Any other discussion on this amendment? Okay, with that, all those in favor of Senator Crum's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 64, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no?
No.
I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and have everyone that is in favor of that amendment, please stand. And those opposed, please stand. Okay, that amendment is failed, 15 to 12. Onward to Committee of the Whole number 2. Let's see. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 2 to House Bill 64 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is just something staff brought to us to true up with all the other bills that are going through dealing in this area of statute.
Senator Steinmetz, could I stop and have him read that in, please?
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
I jumped the gun on it.
House Bill 64, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 2 to a gross copy, page 2, lines 1 and 2, delete.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 2 to House Bill 64 and what I said before,
Okay,
just to true up with statutory reference.
any discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 2? Okay, I'm sensing that there's no discussion, so let's go ahead and take a vote on that. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 2 to House Bill 64, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, that amendment is passed. I think we have one more. Senator Steinmetz, let's go ahead and have that read in.
House Bill 64, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 3 to engrossed copy, page 3 after line 10, insert.
Go ahead, Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd move Standing Committee, or Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 3 to House Bill 64 and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow Senators, this just basically takes out when we have prescriptive terms like physician or technician who performed the ultrasound. We decided to change that to healthcare provider so that it encompasses anyone that might be prescribing or doing the ultrasounds. And so that's all this amendment does. It's just a conforming language across the scope of medical practice and the bill. Thank you.
Any discussion on Committee of the Whole number 3? Okay, with that, all those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion to adopt the Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 3 to House Bill 64, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 3 to House Bill 64 has passed. Back on the bill. Any more discussion on the bill? Senator Guru?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So with that last amendment, I just want to take a look back on page 5, and let's just see who we made felons now. Starting on line 9, except otherwise proven in this subsection, any person who violates this section should be guilty of a felony by a fine not to exceed $20,000, in prison for not more than 5 years or both. So, okay, here's the situation. Someone contemplates taking one of these medications. They go into the hospital, and now, once they say that, all the doctors are going to run from the room because they're at a potential risk. So I don't know who we're going to get to do this vaginal ultrasound, but whoever it is, they too are going to run the gauntlet of legality. And I guess, once again, and I understand, I know, as my good friend from over the hill said, I know these are hard things to talk about, Madam Chair, but since these bills keep coming and we keep making more and more felons, and as we keep trying to chase, whether it's a court decision or whether it's our own desire to make sure that everyone knows where we are on this issue, we make felon after felon after felon. We do fine after fine after fine from people who are just maybe looking for an answer, maybe looking for help. I've often said in these bills that we should stop debating these bills, or maybe stop bringing them and take an hour each week and go to a local high school or go to a local junior college and just talk to the kids for 20 minutes and talk to them about the dangers of doing things or making bad choices, because it'd be a heck of a lot more productive. And the jails would probably like it, and folks over at our correctional facility would enjoy the fact that we're not making more and more work for them to do. They come in and ask for a budget increase. I defy anyone in this room to vote against it, since we're doing this make work project for them. I'm against this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, sensing we might be in for a lengthy debate, let me see if I can model brevity in the debate. Madam Chairman, this bill is an attempt to achieve by harassment what the courts so far have not allowed to be achieved directly. It's a bad bill, and I urge the Senate to vote no.
Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, when I sat in committee and listened to the bringer of the bill bring this to me, chemical abortions, ultrasound requirements, he talked about how possible young ladies can order online a pill that they think is gonna kill their baby. Simple as that. That's what they're thinking. But they don't have any knowledge about how far along they are in their pregnancy, or even if they're still pregnant. They don't know if they're gonna be allergic to that medicine. Is the pregnancy outside of the uterus, as mentioned before? How long will they be using this medicine? Will they have blood clot? Do they have a blood clot disorder, or anemia, or even chronic adrenal failure? Or have they even thought about, if I take this medicine, will I have an emergency, a place to go once this happens? So to me, it's common sense that if I'm gonna take a pill that I got offline to kill my child, I'm gonna wanna have all the precautions in order. Simple as that, Madam Chair. On and for the bill.
Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The beauty of a free system is that that choice would be the individual's choice. This is the most anti-freedom bill I think we've seen this session. The idea that a woman is forced to have a transvaginal ultrasound that is not the standard of care for a chemical abortion. It is not the standard of care for a chemical abortion. To have it forced upon her to make a choice that should be between her and her health care provider, pursuant to Article 1, Section 38, is a transgression of rights that I just can't comprehend. Again, and we've said this many times, but it doesn't seem to stick. Each competent adult shall have the right to make his or her own healthcare decisions. These are healthcare providers we're discussing in the bill. You get to make that with them. And the irony of this part of the Constitution, Madam Chairman, is the D provision that the state of Wyoming shall act to preserve these rights from undue governmental infringement. That's what I would call the opposite of this bill. Our obligation under the Constitution is literally to kill this bill, because it is an undue infringement of the individual rights, outside the standard of care, intruding upon a relationship between a healthcare provider and their patient in making medical decisions for that individual. This is big government. Most accurate statement I heard so far was the good senator from Natrona County, though, referring to it as harassment. That is the intent. The cruelty is the point, Madam Chairman.
Senator Nethercott?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do find the tactic curious. What is the rationale? To protect life. This body has consistently voted to protect life at least a dozen times a session for the last decade, it seems. I think we're established on that front. But what is it that we're trying to do with this bill? Is it protecting life? Or is it providing information to a woman that's pregnant so she can make a more informed decision that may be more thoughtful, that may be more considered? Is that what we're trying to do? And if so, is there another strategy to provide that information to her before proceeding with that type of permanent decision, other than forcing her to be penetrated? Is there any other way? And if the answer is no, this is the only way, that she will not understand unless she sees the 3-week-old embryo, baby that's developing, that's going to change your mind, as opposed to other type of counseling or literature or conversations that would need to take place with the doctor and the patient or other individuals. No, we don't have any of that. That might be more compelling, actually, or more persuasive, or more humane. This is the solution, and I do question the rationale on and for the bill. Let us continue with the litigation in perpetuity.
Any other discussion? Oh, hang on. We almost got to the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah. Wow. Vote aye for this because keep it going. Okay. Yeah, I guess to me, it just seems like if, we're talking about people, Madam Chairman, we're talking about usually young people caught up in a situation, sometimes for reason, passing understanding, sometimes, we could go through the litany of reasons, but, back in another time, in another place, you might be able to go visit your regular doctor, but we made that illegal a long time ago. Could go to your OB/GYN, but they're gone. So yeah, they have to read a newspaper or some article somewhere. It says, did your state ban this? Did your state turn your OB/GYN into a criminal? Did they turn your doctor into a criminal? Buy this pill. That's where we're at. That's where we are. We're chasing, we're just pushing and we're chasing. And yes, I think the good senator from Bates Creek said it best, harassing people into these situations. And we're building mouse traps to trap them, to make sure that they're all felons at the end of the day, all for one reason, that at the end of the day, I just wonder if the cure isn't worse than the disease itself, to wonder why we're doing this, because like I say, once again, we're talking about people. And yes, born and unborn, and putting them both into situations that are absolutely unfair, absolutely wrong. I'm against it. Continue to be.
Any other discussion? Oh. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to kind of bring us home here. This bill is actually a bill of compassion because unfortunately abortion is legal right now, and there are 2 people here, and one of them is being terminated. And if the drugs are not administered properly, the one that's being terminated is going to suffer more, and so is the mother who is doing this, because it will be very hard on her as well. There is one drug that actually kills the baby that is administered, and then there's one that is expelled. And if those are in the wrong doses and a woman is choosing to do this and she doesn't know the gestational age of the baby, then those drugs cannot be administered properly and it could harm her. And it is excruciating for that child who could feel pain. So with that, I ask you to vote for compassion and vote for this bill. And I call for the question.
Senator Ruffus.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know this debate is uncomfortable. I don't think it's as uncomfortable probably as a forced penetration with a transvaginal ultrasound. But again, something that's regrettable that we're discussing. I do have a question about the way the bill is drafted, though, with the 48-hour waiting period. It's not a minimum from the standpoint of ensuring that there's proximity between the ultrasound and the prescription. It's a minimum from the standpoint of ensuring that the 2 can't be done at the same appointment. And again, getting to the harassment aspect of this, I don't see any other motivation to that policy than harassment, to ensure that somebody who is in a rural community has to travel to receive an ultrasound, whether they like it or not, travel back home, and then not less than 2 days later, travel again for a second visit to a healthcare provider, which costs money again, before they can actually be prescribed what they need and then go to the pharmacist. I can't fathom a justification for that other than harassment. So my question is, what is the motivation for ensuring the continued discomfort and emotional trauma for these individuals, as well as the additional financial hardship?
Any further discussion? Whoops. Oh, hang on. Senator Guru.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I know the folks bringing this bill, and my good deskmate just said, this is a compassionate bill. And I believe that she believes that. I believe that. This is a battle of ideas, not of personalities. I believe that they believe that. And I could not be more fervent in my belief that that is exactly not true. And so as we move forward this bill, I hope not, I hope you vote no, and then we can end this discussion now. But if it goes forward, I look forward to hearing from our medical community to come and tell us and to tell this body as we once again convene the College of Medicine here at the 68th Legislature, how they could come and advise us that this is so compassionate. I look forward to that conversation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion, Senator Driscoll, and then we'll go to Senator Dockster.
Chairman, hopefully I'm on the right bill this time. A little bit of problem here. I'm doing a little research and I'm having a hard time following this. So I'm reading a little deal that says conception happens and the sperm swims up through the vagina and fertilizes an egg, implants. Then I pull up another page and it talks about Plan B, morning after pill. And you buy it over the counter. So when someone buys that, they don't know for sure one way or the other. But the way I read this bill, they're gonna have to go get an ultrasound before they can do it. And if it so happens that they actually have implantation, the clerk at the store now, because we've done it, now just sold that. So down at your local store, whoever sold that is now guilty of a felony, or anyone else that prescribed it. So I'm not sure, maybe I might be having a bad day that I can't read things. I'm on the wrong bill often, but it appears I'm really lost on when somebody's gonna have to do an ultrasound if it's 2 days after they've been out on a deal that happens and they think maybe they're doing it and they're gonna take a pill. Do they have to go do the ultrasound? Because that really, the way I read the bill, you're not sure. And we may be doing a lot of ultrasounds on people that actually aren't pregnant, but they're gonna have to do it if they're gonna take this kind of medication. And I think this is craziness, folks. This is, I listened to my legal counsel to my left, and I tend to agree that on one way, it'd be really fun just to watch this go to court and watch us sue the pants off everybody. Go back and forth and tie it up in court. But that doesn't do the people of the state any good. And this really is nonsense. This is not a good bill. It's not good for the people of Wyoming, and I don't think it does anything near what's being presented.
Senator Dockster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Words like fear and uncomfortable. I'll be brief. I have no fear in standing for life in any form, shape, or however we get to it. I have no fear. On and for the bill, call for the question.
Okay, any further discussion? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just curious, maybe that was in an amendment that I've missed, but where is the reference to the Plan B procedure? Is that there? If so, we need an explanation as to that. So if we could get some more information about that, what that is, how that works. Is that really part of an abortion? Kind of need some more detail on that.
Senator Brennan, do you have an answer?
Yeah, sorry, I got a little excited about maybe having part of an answer, and I think we do need to research maybe that and come back with a second reading and clarify with the wording in this. But Plan B is a progesterone, and that's a hormone, and what that does then is it's what some of our birth controls are progesterone only. Some of them are estrogen and progesterone. And so that's what my understanding of what Plan B is. When we've talked about chemical abortions in the past, that has not been something that has been part of that definition, but in the way that this is written, I think we can either ask for clarification or maybe put a clarifying amendment in that on second reading.
Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. According to what I read, Plan B is something that a woman will take after she's had sex the next morning to prevent her from getting pregnant. It's not included in this chemical abortion. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion on this bill? Okay, Senator Rothfuss.
So maybe if this goes to second reading, which I assume it will, we can have a little more discussion on Plan B, because it does require that it's utilized in the first 72 hours, but the other definitions and everything else we've been talking about suggests that life begins at conception. When you incorporate life begins at conception with this legislation, it would be my assumption that at that point, this, as I read the definition, would contemplate banning Plan B. Now, perhaps this bill standing alone may not yet, but perhaps it may, and if the intent is not to include Plan B, I do think there needs to be a second reading amendment to explicitly note that those types of emergency contraceptives can be utilized without the threat of a 10, 20-year violation for having it. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Any further discussion? Okay. I think we might be ready for the question. All those in favor of Senator Barlow's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 64, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. Well, I would probably say this bill has failed, but let's do a standing division just to be safe. So, all those that are in favor of this bill, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. Okay, the vote is 22 aye and 8 no, so the bill moves forward. All right, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 172.
House Bill 172, Repeal Gun-Free Zones and Preemption Amendments, an act relating to concealed weapons, sponsored by Representative Harrelson. Was referred to Committee Number 1, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Crago, Crum, Hicks, Kolb, and Olson. Senator Olson, Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Olson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 172 do pass. There is a standing committee amendment, so I'll ask that to be read in.
House Bill 172, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 20, after.
And I will deal with I will move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 172 and ask for your favorable consideration. So I will walk through this as best I can without you knowing a whole lot about the bill. but I'm sure you've heard about this bill enough during the session that you should know at least basically what we're talking about. This amendment does a couple of things. The primary thing that it does is actually the bottom of the amendment, that's lines 24 and on. And what it does is makes it very clear that that a person who is enrolled as a student in an elementary or a secondary school cannot conceal carry in any of the places outlined in the bill. Specifically, that's obviously, at any elementary or secondary school facility. So that's the primary thing that it does. The second thing that it does is when we talk about licensed facilities where concealed carry is not permitted, we learned that there are some facilities like daycares inside colleges that are not licensed by the department that oversees our family services because the state doesn't license itself. So we wanted to make sure that they were equally exempt, and so that is part of the amendment. Page 4 deals with, page 4, line 20, deals with language. There were two areas in the bill that dealt with a person's requirement to keep any firearm in a concealed biometric container or lockbox. And the two areas in the bill that contained this language were slightly different from each other. One said something like locking box, I think, and the other one said lockbox. And then one had language that the lockbox had to be within the direct control of the person at all times. The other provision did not. All we did with this provision of the amendment is make the language consistent between the two, so that you have to, if you're a student or an employee or a person, depending on what facility you're in, and you have a concealed carry, you have the obligation of locking it up in a container that's either biometrically secured or one that has a lockbox that's in your direct control at all times. And then the last thing that this bill does is on pages 5 and 6, lines 20, and then on 6, lines 1 and 5, dealing with school districts. In this bill, school districts have the ability to restrict their employees if a school board so determines. We just clarified that language so that a school board could actually restrict its employees and or volunteers as well. And Madam Chairman, I'm just double checking. That is the amendment, so I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, question's been called on the amendment. So all those in favor of Senator Olson's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 172, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? Okay, Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 172 is passed. You want to continue? You want to do the next amendment?
Nope, just the Standing Committee Amendment. I'll leave the committee a whole amendment for Senator Hicks.
Okay.
But right now, I will turn over an explanation of the bill to the good senator from Goshen County.
Okay. Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, senators, for your good work today. Today, I bring you House Bill 172, Repeal of Gun-Free Zones Preemption Amendment. This necessary legislation seeks to repeal existing gun-free zones. The bill covers public spaces in some legislative sessions, committee meetings, public buildings, and public schools and colleges. It excludes law enforcement facilities, courts, prisons, or jails. 25 out of 48 schools in Wyoming have armed school resource officers, but we know that many times they can't cover all of our small schools, and they are not able to respond if there were an attack. There's a good reason that air marshals on planes don't wear uniforms. If you have an armed officer in a school, don't make him readily identifiable. Give him a staff position in the school so it won't be obvious he is the one person who has a gun. But designated officers shouldn't be the only people who can protect students. 5 Wyoming school districts already allow teachers and staff to conceal carry handguns. 27 other states have the same policies. Gun-free zones attract attackers. The penalties for violating gun-free zones are severe for law-abiding citizens, but the threat of a few years in prison means nothing to someone facing a mass murder charge. The law just ensures that only murderers will have a gun. So instead of using signs declaring that schools are gun-free zones or public buildings are gun-free zones, let's put up signs warning attackers that law-abiding citizens have handguns and are prepared to protect themselves. And so with that, Madam Chairman, the bill deals with two different kinds of spaces. It deals with like the public spaces, and in those you can constitutional carry it in public buildings and like the Capitol, legislative sessions. And then for education, it requires a concealed carry permit authorized under Wyoming law. So with that, Madam Chairman, I'll just take you through some of the bill because it's a very important bill. So basically, persons lawfully carrying concealed weapons may carry concealed weapons in the following places, and this is the constitutional carry on page 2, in any meeting of a governmental entity and any meeting of the legislature or committee thereof, any public building not otherwise prohibited by law, which is 68104T, and regulated under this section. And then when you go to the education and subsection C, the bottom of page 2, that starts dealing with our educational facilities. And in that subsection, you have to have a permit authorized by the Wyoming concealed carry permit. And that is in any public school, public college, university, athletic event taking place on public property that does not sell alcoholic beverages, so that's very important. Any public elementary or secondary school facility, any college or university facility. Nothing in this section, this is the exemptions, shall allow the carrying of the concealed weapon, and the statute that talks about there is law enforcement, jail, courtroom, place that dispenses alcohol, place prohibited by federal law. It also doesn't prohibit a private property owner from restricting firearms on its private property. And it doesn't prohibit a governmental entity from prohibiting open carry, display, or wearing of the firearm on its facilities or campus. Down in the bottom of the page, that deals with federal buildings. And then we go into the other side where we don't allow it at Health and Human Services, Department of Family Services, Department of Corrections, or Health and Human Services facilities. Because of some of the high risk that are there, Madam Chairman, that is a prohibition on that. And then the next subsection deals with hazardous materials that might explode, so we don't want you carrying firearms in a place where there's explosive materials that could reasonably cause serious bodily injury, or prohibit a governmental entity from requiring any employees or students to store firearms with their concealed biometric container. And this is where the amendment came in and talked about the kinds of containers they can require, or prohibit the storage of firearms and ammunition on a public campus or housing by any employer or student. Then the requirement for storage, the prohibition on knowingly prohibiting another person from lawfully carrying the concealed weapon in a place that is authorized. There's a fine there, imprisonment of not more than 1 year and a fine of $2,000. Then the next section deals with an employee of the school district. They can adopt rules and regulations to govern the employees lawfully carrying. And if no rules and regulations are adopted, then an employee with a permit to conceal carry may conceal carry under the provisions of this act. And the rules have to require that they maintain a firearm on their person at all times, establish ongoing training, so they would have to go to that, and then it establishes the rules for the training. the Board of Trustees also may waive all or part of the training requirements. And with that, then on page 8, there's just a repealer, and that repeals current law of what gun-free zones are, Madam Chairman. So with that, that's an explanation of the bill, and I'd stand for any questions.
Discussion on the bill. Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to rise and reflect a little bit with fellow senators. This actually was a topic that was given to your joint Judiciary Committee this past year by the Management Council. It was taken up by the joint committee, but only in a brief fashion because it was pretty explicitly stated by a member or two that it really didn't matter what the Joint Judiciary Committee would come up with, that these bills would arrive anyway. And so I just wanted to reflect that for those of you who may have known, those who served on the Management Council or whatever, and knew that this was given to the Judiciary Committee. The committee just simply voted not to pursue anything on this front, knowing that it was coming anyway. And so we have this bill in front of us, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Other discussion on the bill? Okay, we do have another amendment. Why don't we go ahead and take care of that right now? Would you read the amendment in, please?
House Bill 172, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2 after line 14, insert.
Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 172, and just ask for your favorable consideration. During testimony on this bill, it was pointed out to the committee that airports is probably an area that you want to restrict concealed carry at, and some areas within the airport are under federal jurisdiction. And so all this amendment does is come in that you can conceal carry in any airport and areas of the airport where the carrying of a concealed weapon is not prohibited or restricted under federal law or federal regulations. Stand for any questions.
Any questions on Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1? Okay. Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Hicks's Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 172, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, that amendment has passed. Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 172. Back on the bill.
Question.
Senator Landon.
I'm sorry. I know we want to get done, but I did have a question. I had no less, before we took that up on the Judiciary Committee, I did have several questions from specifically our school districts. At least 7 superintendents contacted me and asked about any bill that would be coming to the session. And the concern was specifically 2 of those superintendents, one on the eastern side of the state and one up in the Bighorn Basin, asked me if it would be prohibited in cases where somebody would come in front of the Board of Trustees meeting. Those can become very heated. They can be pretty toxic environments at times. And the concern by those superintendents of those districts was that we would exempt those situations. I've been trying to find where that is, if it's in the bill, but I can't. And so I'm just trying to drill down a little bit and understand if those situations are covered in any way, or if we are going to allow carry in all situations related to a school district. Thank you.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm curious who's asking for this, and I'm not saying I haven't heard from some people asking for this. There are a lot of passionate Second Amendment supporters out there that really strongly believe and desire the right to carry concealed in all of these locations. But, Madam Chairman, in my experience, that's a very small number compared to the number of people in schools, the number of people in agencies, the number of people in the general public, the number of my constituents that generally strongly oppose this out of concerns for their health and safety, when they show up at these places. When I look to school districts, I'm asking the proponents of the bill, are you hearing from school districts that the legislation that we passed, I want to say 8 years ago, is insufficient? Because it's my understanding that that was the sweet spot for school districts to have the capacity to have well-trained staff to control it and to make the decision as a local board. So I haven't heard from any school districts, Madam Chairman, calling for this bill, or any teachers or educators or anybody in the K-12 system calling for this legislation, and I want to know, am I missing something there? Has that call gone out and I just haven't been listening to our district? At the same time, Madam Chairman, from the university and the college's standpoint, I haven't heard any desire to change the local control option that's in place where they have the capacity to regulate internally. They can grant rights. They typically restrict those rights out of an interest of protecting the safety of the students on the campus, but it's those communities that are interested. So, Madam Chairman, again, when I hear from students, and I hear from a lot of students, I know that over the years, the Associated Students of the University of Wyoming have opposed legislation like this, so they're not calling for it. I know over the years, the faculty at the University of Wyoming have opposed legislation like this, and so they're certainly not calling for it. The staff as well. So I'm not hearing from the university anyone calling from it, and my recollection is that the community colleges are also not supporting this legislation. So who among those groups am I missing? Who is calling for it among those bodies that needs to see additional firearms in their environment? Same for government agencies. Madam Chairman, it seems that our government agencies have not been calling for it. But very specifically, it seems that the cities, towns, and counties that have the authority to grant or deny this at this point in time are really quite happy with their own internal authority to grant or deny. So any city, town, or county, any commission or council that chooses to allow concealed carry in their chambers at this point in time could certainly do that. That would be lawful, and they have that opportunity. So those that want to, I would assume, are already doing it, and those that don't are not. So, Madam Chairman, this seems like a solution in search of a problem, where a very small number of incredibly vocal individuals are directing the policy of the state with regard to where firearms can and can't be carried, without any data to support increased or enhanced safety. And there certainly is no data indicating that legislation like this enhances the safety of individuals in the state. It is not out there. So the question then is, why? Who are we satisfying? Who are the calls coming from? Because my constituents are not just wishing they could carry their guns in more places more often with more people, Madam Chairman. Perhaps some answers, any data, any suggestions, would be appreciated.
Further discussion? Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to answer my good colleague in the back corner, yes, if someone had a Wyoming concealed carry permit, they would be able to carry on the grounds of the public schools.
Any other discussion? Senator Landon?
Well, Madam Chairman, so that begs the question, if that's really something that we may want to consider here in the Senate, and that is, frankly, there are situations where things can be very heated. Sometimes you take up election bills on the Corporations Committee and people can get pretty heated. But in deference to the superintendents who talked to me, there is some legitimate concern that that can be a very intimidating thing for a board of trustees to put up with an angry parent. Perhaps a student has been suspended, for example, and in an environment like that, they were simply asking for our consideration. This was before we even drafted a bill on the Judiciary Committee, and I thought that was worth sharing with the body because it makes some sense to me. You know, another consideration that we had before we drafted anything and didn't, but, you know, where's the bar in terms of what we allow for concealed carry here in Wyoming? I think it's probably lower than the states around us, if I remember correctly. So there's numerous other things we can talk about. Taking care of those districts out there who said, please don't do this because we've got this. We've got it. And that's compelling to me. So I guess I'd like a little bit more conversation there. Maybe, by God, we're going to do it no matter what, but that seemed like a situation we may want to consider.
Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think this does deserve a bit more conversation because the narrative that people that don't want change will always talk about is, number one, there's no need. Number two, you know, we have local control, and local control dictates that we don't want to change what we're currently doing. I think the fallacy is that people don't admit, probably psychologically don't want to admit that people conceal carry all the time, probably without a permit. They're in all these meetings, they're in all these heated spaces, and if they were bad people with bad intentions, you know, a sign outside the door or the knowledge that it's a gun-free zone with terrific penalties if you get caught in there with a gun do not work. We want to cover ourselves in this blanket of security that is a fallacy. It is a fallacy to believe that a sign outside the door will stop an evil person with evil intent to kill the most innocent among us. It doesn't work. It never has worked. Thank God it doesn't happen very much in the state of Wyoming, but it does happen. And for the people who, we're just talking about K through 12 now, to get into K through 12, you need to have a reason. You don't just walk through the front door. My school doesn't let me walk through the front door. So for the rare instance you may have somebody who is concealed carrying, and I might add, concealed carry takes 3 approvals. It takes, in a case of a city, it takes the police chief, it takes the county sheriff, and then it takes DCI. And that's to make sure you're probably not, quote unquote, you know, a mentally unstable person for the most part. Besides, you might have a background problem. So you don't just get a concealed carry. So you're talking about a very unique circumstance where you'd have a person would have a reason to be in school who is concealed carrying. It's an enhancement for public safety. It's an enhancement to protect the most innocent among us. It is not a detriment. I think we just like to continue to do what we've always have done. I can't see the downside, nor have I heard the argument that factually talks about why it's a negative thing. No, they talk about, well, we just don't want change. Well, we don't think it's the best thing we should do because, well, a school board, probably because of their school attorney, has told them not to do it because of the liability issue. There's a lot of reasons why we don't do things that we could do. And for all those districts that have adopted a concealed carry permit, I haven't heard of one that had any mass shootings break out. I haven't heard of one malfunction because of it. I think this enhances the safety of our children. It puts uncertainty in the minds of evil people that would hurt the most innocent among us. And that's worth a lot to me, the uncertainty, because there's one thing that cowards are afraid of, it's somebody fighting back. And I guess to stop this, I'll just say the only thing that's going to stop a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun, whether that be myself or you, any good person, or law enforcement, whoever gets there first. But I don't want to give them that extra time to hurt more people. On and for the bill.
Senator Smith?
Madam Chair, to pile on with the dapper man from the Rocket City, gun carriers are generally not victims of violent crime. And we know there's lies, seeking lies and statistics, but you can Google, you can find it. These guys are looking for soft targets. They just are. You know, that shooter there in Denver drove past the the movie theater that restricted, that didn't have gun restrictions to the movie theater, that didn't allow them. It's just good policy. We're just sitting ducks. At some point, we're gonna wish we'd done this before. And I just wanna, it always comes back to what you know. And I have a daughter who's a first grade teacher in Rawlins, Wyoming. And she's lethal from 30 feet. She could hit a target between the eyes from 30 feet with her Springfield Hellcat 9mm with 15-round clips that we bought her for her 21st birthday. And she's well-trained and she's ready. I can't think of a safer class in the state if this bill passes. So I just don't, we have good people in the state. No, that's not, by the way, we're not gonna have people toting guns on their hip and kids being afraid. That's not what this bill does. This is a common sense bill. And it's been well thought out, and it's been well argued, and it's time. It is just time that we just do away with gun-free zones, because they're anything but safe for our kids.
Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I'll try to answer a couple of the questions. And for my colleague from Albany County, the one thing that he said earlier, I think, is the very reason that this bill's here before us today, is that if a local government can convey you a right, they can also take those rights away from you. So anytime you can convey a right as a government entity, you can also strip that away from people. And quite frankly, I think that's what many of us believe, that we upheld our hand to uphold the Constitution. And so it becomes down to a Second Amendment philosophical, but it does worry me that government can take away those rights, those constitutional rights. You know, and to my colleague in Madrona County, I had a long conversation with one of my superintendents, and this question comes up about, what about in these school board meetings and they're dealing with contentious issues? And my question to him was, how do you know there's not already people sitting out there with concealed carry permits? I'm just telling you, I spend a little time in a school down in my neck of the woods, and I go to the basketball games and stuff like that, and I'm pretty sure there's a whole bunch of guns in that building. It may be illegal under this law, but nobody knows it. It's just part of our culture. But the idea that just because you have a concealed carry permit and you're a hot meeting, they're probably already there. I always think about my colleague that used to sit next to me from Sheridan out there, and he always would tell the story about when he was mayor of Sheridan, and they read really contentious issues and people were really, really angry at him. He said, I always ran every meeting of the town council like everybody else had a gun in there but me. And so a lot of it is how you handle these situations. And I think that was pretty sage advice. But I would almost guarantee you that in most of these settings, there's already concealed carry permits there. You just don't know about it. This just makes people legal for a legal activity that should have never been restricted in the first place. The sun's going to come up tomorrow, and I would almost guarantee you nothing's going to change if we pass this law, because they're already out there, folks.
Senator Pearson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, great debate. I have talked to teachers. I know that there are some school districts that are against this. I've talked to teachers that have both said to me, one group that says, I don't think that the state should be telling us that we have to be armed in school to protect our kids. My response to that person was, we're not saying that you have to be armed. We're giving you that option. I've also talked to other teachers that have said they would love to be able to concealed carry in their schools. They are very concerned. Yeah, they have their trainings where the doors are locked and they're in a closet and they're hiding and all of these things, yes, but they feel like they're sitting ducks in there. They have a little basket of goods that they can use to defend themselves, whether it be erasers or staplers or things like that. But they cannot legally carry in the school, and so they feel like that they are unable to protect their children. So
So I've heard both arguments. We're not telling teachers that they have to carry in school. We're not telling them that they have to. We're telling them that they have that option. If they feel comfortable doing it, great. If they feel comfortable with that weapon and protecting those children, because you're right, you don't know who's going in there. There aren't enough law enforcement officers in there to help protect those children, but if we had some armed teachers that felt comfortable doing it, I would love to be able to concealed carry on my bus, honestly. So that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Senator Drew.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good common sense legislation. I just heard that from the other side of the room. I'll just take a second, direct your attention. This good common sense piece of legislation to page 10 in the penalty phases to make sure that if you don't take care of this good common sense legislation, the penalties that you will incur. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just like to say the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America simply says, shall not infringe upon anyone's rights to bear arms, right to bear arms. Period. Since we like to be constitutional. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This idea that my kids are safer if their teachers are carrying guns by the choice of the teacher, or my kids are safer at school if the parents of the other children walk into the classroom carrying a gun, is unsettling to me, Madam Chairman. I don't know why, in a body that supports things like parents' rights and parents' choice, I, as a parent of children that go to public schools, don't have some say or ability to even have insight or knowledge into whether people are carrying weapons around my kids. I do understand that we've got a Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, but I also understand through the case law that they've always respected time, place, manner restrictions, such as in schools. There's no U.S. Supreme Court decision that says, thou shalt be able to carry a gun in a public school as a parent of the kids without the consent of anyone around you. Because that's irrational, Madam Chairman. One of the concerns with the Second Amendment, obviously, is that we think of it as a me right. It's always about me. This is my right. I have the right to carry a gun. I want to carry a gun. I want to carry a gun everywhere. The challenge here is that sometimes that right actually influences people around that individual, because they're carrying a deadly weapon that they may or may not be trained to any capacity with, right? The bar for the Wyoming concealed carry permit includes a simple hunter's safety certificate. You don't have to be expert at firearms to get a Wyoming concealed carry permit, and that's the higher standard in this bill. Lower standard is constitutional. Did I wake up this morning? If yes, you can carry a gun. But when we're talking in schools, Madam Chairman, you have to have the concealed carry permit, which means that perhaps when you were 13 years old, you attended a couple of hours of probably not even hands-on firearm training in a cafeteria at a school somewhere. And then that person, according to this legislation, is allowed to carry a gun into a classroom where my children are without me knowing or having any say on the matter. That's what this bill does that I'm the most concerned about. And ironically, Madam Chairman, the teacher in that classroom, based on the existence of other statutes, is more challenged to be carrying a weapon in that situation than the parents that walk into the classroom. The parents that walk into the classroom, potentially being of significant concern,
potentially mentally unstable. Remember, you only had to be mentally stable at the time when you got your concealed carry permit. You don't have to be today when you're carrying it into the classroom. You can be upset, you can be a danger to the public, you can be suicidal. All of those things are fine. You've still got your concealed carry permit. That's how our law works. We're not going to take that away. So, the rights of parents that do not want random individuals untrained with weapons to carry concealed weapons near their children are subjugated, and the rights of any individual, regardless of their intentions, their training, whether they even have kids in the school, if they can be walking around the school, are elevated above those safety interests of other parents. That's where the tension is here. And this legislation simply comes down on the side of those that are truly passionate about carrying guns. That's who wins with this bill. Those that are truly passionate. And the interesting thing, Madam Chairman, that I heard from this debate today, and I heard it a few times, and it's something I hadn't thought of before, but I think it's poignant, is how many of these passionate Second Amendment concealed carry permit holders apparently show up to meetings carrying their weapons illegally. They're breaking the law. I heard that from 2 senators here with laughter. They're carrying it anyway. I'm not entirely sure, Madam Chairman, whether that's a felony or a misdemeanor. I'd have to go back to the Green Books to figure out what crime they've committed by carrying that illegally into a meeting at this point in time, but we laugh about it. We celebrate that. It's good that they're there. These criminals, these violators of the Wyoming statute that are carrying weapons where they don't belong, where they're not allowed right now, they're the ones we want carrying guns. People who, Madam Chairman, have chosen knowingly to willfully violate Wyoming statutes, unconvicted felons in the state of Wyoming, because they just haven't been caught. We need to give them the guns and send them into the classrooms. That's what this bill does, and that's what that debate has taught me, Madam Chairman. Irresponsible.
Any further discussion? Okay, hang on, Senator Jones, and then I'll come back to the other senator.
I just had a couple of questions, and I apologize if it's in here somewhere, but if you're going to school and you have a concealed weapon, say on your ankle or whatever, you sit down and someone sees it, who has the authority to ask me if I have a concealed carry permit? And if I do not have one, what happens then, and who has the authority to do something about that?
Okay. Senator Kolb, do you want to go now?
Don't know the answer to that question, but I was going to answer what the,
You don't have to
the
answer
good
it if you
senator
don't
from
like.
the Ivory Towers was talking about. I wasn't talking about people that had a concealed carry permit. I just said people carry all the time. I'm not saying they should have done it. I'm saying they do. And the point is, mayhem and murder doesn't break out. That's the point. Now, talking about somebody's rights, let's talk about the flip side of this. So you have then the right to get me killed in an area that you didn't supply protection to, because I walked in there thinking, I guess I was protected by the concealed, no weapons, gun-free zone. I was protected by the fallacy that that's going to shield me. Where is the right that I have to protect mine, my family, children, and innocent people if I so wanted to, when there's nobody there to protect me? It's a fallacy. That's the whole problem with this gun-free zone. It's built on hope and lollipops and rainbows. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Good people who are law-abiding citizens don't break the law and don't kill people. The bad folks do. There's no protection there for good people. And then you strip my ability to come there with a weapon to potentially, if the situation comes up, or maybe another good person, to stand up against somebody with a gun who would kill innocent people. You strip that ability from me. That's the taking that I see, because there is no law enforcement there, certainly not next to me. Maybe down the hall, or maybe a distance away you could unload 60 rounds, 90 rounds, whatever. It depends on your proficiency, I suppose, if you were going to commit murder and mayhem on the innocent people. There's another side to this issue. And someone feeling warm and fuzzy about a sign doesn't protect people from people that want to kill people. That's just a fact. It's happened all over the United States. And I'll once again say, I'm not going to tell you this concealed carry permit ability for someone to be in a school is going to be the end-all be-all. I didn't say that. But no one has said why it's a bad thing, besides the fear, unfounded fear, about a thing that doesn't protect anybody. A fear that someone's going to have a weapon in a place that was going to do bad things, and they'll do bad things anyway. So stripping my protection away, as stated by other people in the Senate, you know, it doesn't seem fair to me. It doesn't seem fair to do that to me, or to my family, or to my loved ones, because there is no protection there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry there isn't. So everything we can do to put an unknown factor out there for people that are bad to consider, because I assure you, weak people do not want to stand up against strong people. That's why they attack the weakest among us. On and for the bill, Madam Chairman.
Any further discussion? Okay, I've heard the question being asked. I think maybe you're ready for the question, so all those in favor of Senator Barlow's motion, that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 172, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? No. Okay, I believe that House Bill 172 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is, oh, hang on. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I privilege of the floor?
Sure, you may.
Members of the Senate probably could use a stand up and a little bit of a stretch. If you'd help me welcome Gillette area leadership folks here up in the gallery. They're here down watching the process. They visit our Supreme Court and been with the governor, and they've had a great time here despite the snow. Please welcome them. They're all around, actually, the gallery, so welcome them to the Senate. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
You betcha. Welcome to the Senate. Wish we could have had better weather for you, but we couldn't do that, so. Anyway, moving forward, let's move on to House Bill 234. Oops, sorry. Gotta hand it to the reading clerk. We're playing.
House Bill 234, Second Amendment Financial Privacy Act Amendments, an act relating to the protection of constitutional rights, sponsored by Representative Alamont, was referred to Committee Number 5, which turned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Crago, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pearson. Senator French, Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator French?
Madam Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 234 do pass. And for an explanation on that, I call on Senator Ide. And he'll be with you shortly.
I was going to say, has anybody got a joke while we're waiting for Senator Ide? Oh, there he is. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was prepared to do another Bill Alaman bill here, so I was on 108. I thought that was coming up first here, but this House Bill 234, let's see here. Make sure I get this straight. Hold on a second. So yeah, this financial privacy amendment, basically what this bill does is it's in the title there, an act relating to protection of constitutional rights prohibiting disclosure or use of information relating to firearms, ammunition sales, as specified, providing requirements for disclosure, requiring investigations as specified, authorized civil actions as specified, and providing amending definitions. So basically, make sure I got this straight here. This kind of jumped out at me. This bill, from a
it's just a summary. This bill prohibits payment settlement activities from utilizing and assigning merchant category codes to sales of firearms, ammunition, and subjects violations to misdemeanor punishable by $1,000 for every violating code used. This bill also makes it unlawful for financial institutions to discriminate against a firearms entity or declining a lawful payment card transaction for firearms or ammunition. Since we wore everybody out on the last one here, we'll get a double header here on the Second Amendment. This bill would protect our God-given rights to keep and bear arms, particularly protecting Americans' financial privacy and nullifying most of the federal acts that would undermine that. With that, the bill, essentially, there's a lot of definitions in here. That's the bill, what I just summarized there. And I would ask for your favorable vote on the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussion on the bill. Senator Nethercott?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This was in the previous legislation that's passed, currently still there, but we changed the may to a shall regarding the Attorney General, which is never advisable, by the way, which is why it was a may to begin with. I know we want to really go hard at this. And then it requires the Attorney General to investigate. And I guess the question is, who within the Attorney General's office would investigate, and what type of an investigation are they doing? Is this in anticipation of civil litigation? Is this anticipation of a criminal investigation? Does the Attorney General actually have investigative authority over some of these civil transactions? Are they issuing warrants? Who's doing all this stuff? I mean, I hate to start to kind of think this through, because I don't think any of this is happening within the state in the way that it was, because that's part of the effort to get this originally passed. But just want you to start thinking about making the Attorney General do things, and then how does the Attorney General actually do them, and what does that mean?
Senator Craigo?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And so I had this in committee, and we kind of actually shoved it through rather quickly, and so I'll be honest, part of it's my fault, but I didn't get my head wrapped around everything that's happening in this bill, which is a lot more than we just heard. And so one of my questions, and I think we need to sort this out over the coming days, is who is this enforced against? And that was one of the questions I had for one of the folks in committee, is how do we enforce this? Who is the civil action brought against? And what effect will this actually have on our retailers that are actually selling the firearms, ammunition, et cetera, here in the state? I just don't want to, in protecting our rights, I don't want unintended consequences for our retailers. And so I think that's something, read it carefully, because that's one of my questions is, how does this get enforced? So we have an out-of-state or maybe even international company doing the credit card transactions. We have a local retailer, for example, in my hometown, sells a lot of firearms. They use a credit card servicing company. How will that be enforced? Does that mean they won't get to use their credit card servicing company if there's an injunction brought? I think there's a lot to sort through in this, and we just need to make sure that we're doing it the right way. So just thank you for the chance to comment, Madam Chairman.
Senator Jones?
Madam Chairman, I'm just wondering, can we get some kind of a scenario or something so we can find out exactly why this bill is needed? It seems like there's a lot in here, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but I really would like to know and have someone tell us why we need this, what can this do for us and our constituents?
Senator Wright?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to hit on that last question from the senator from Rock Springs. Essentially, what this does for us and for
the people buying ammunition and firearms is, they would be coded as general merchandise instead of guns and ammunition, essentially. So it would be hard for it to get tracked and single people out. And so just like sporting goods stores, firearm stores, it's left as general merchandise. So the prying eyes, it's a privacy thing. So they can't, come after you for your God-given rights to bear arms. And to bear arms, you need ammunition. So it's just a way to protect and defend the people buying those items and not having Big Brother looking over your shoulder saying, we want to know what you're buying so we can come after you, essentially. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator McEwen?
I might be able, thank you, Madam Chairman, shed a little light on a system that's called a POS system or a point of sale system. I might know a little about that. When you put an item in that computer, you code it by department however you want. And then there's the check for if it's wickable or food stamps. I digress. But the reason I say that is it's pretty in depth of what those systems are capable of. So if you put all weapons and ammunition into that system as general merchandise, the credit card processing company is only going to see general merchandise. If you put it in as firearms or ammunition, that's what you'll see on your statement. So to simplify things, the retailer really has control over what the credit card companies see and don't see. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Other discussion? Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On and for the bill, but I do see some things that have brought up some questions. And what I'll do, if we get it through the second reading, is I'll get over to the bringer of the bill and find out what we can do to clean this up a little bit, make it look better and more palatable for the body. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Craigo?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And so just to maybe help with that a little bit and point out a couple more things I think we need to work on if we're going to clean it up is so in existing law, which on page 8, subsections A and B, you can ask the Attorney General to investigate and refer the issue to the Attorney General. The Attorney General can then do something or not. And then moving to page 9, which is paragraph D, we say if the Attorney General decides not to act, well, we can just do it ourselves. And so then we take it upon us, file a civil action. Anyone aggrieved by any provision of this law can file the action, ask for damages, attorney's fees, etc. Then, if it's, and this is where I'm having a struggle, the Attorney General said, I'm not gonna bring an action, it's up to you. If you wanna do it, fine, under subsection D. Then we flip the page to page 10 in subsection E, we say, if the court finds that something happened under subsection D, then subsection E applies, and now it's back in the Attorney General's hands to go do something with, and that just, to me, I'm having a hard time with the flow. I talked about this a little bit in committee. Seems if once the Attorney General decides he or she is not going to do anything with it, and you take it upon yourself, then it's up to you to see the case through. It shouldn't have to go back to the Attorney General, and so that's one of the things I think we need to clean up as the bill moves forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Nethercott?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman, and just again for thinking, all of you are in support of this bill. We all support the Second Amendment. Again, that's established, there's nothing to prove here. And how do we know that when it relates to debanking of firearms? Well, we already passed this bill, it's called the FIND Act. We did it a couple years ago. And it was a good bill, worked through the full legislature, made into law. What is different now that isn't working about the law we passed a couple years ago that we need these changes, which need significant work? Again, so it's not against the intent of the bill. We've already passed that law. It's these real logistical and legal changes that are amending the law that we created to protect the firearms industry and our Second Amendment rights from the debanking practice from credit card companies that would try to stop that. That's what I'm trying to really understand. Are we doing just another gun bill for it looks like we're doing another gun bill? Or are we actually doing something meaningful here in response to a challenge that our state is experiencing?
Further discussion on this bill? Senator Ide?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to wrap it up. I don't know if I can specifically address that with prior laws, but I think this zeroes in on just tightening everything up as much as we can so everybody knows, the merchants know, the customers know that they're not going to be surveilled effectively, and it protects their privacy. I don't think we can probably have too many gun laws to protect our Second Amendment rights. I mean, the discussion earlier today was, what about people carrying concealed when you're not supposed to and it's illegal? Well, I mean, the way the Constitution reads right now, and it's never been changed, and the good senator from Gillette with the meat grinder said that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer than that to me. I'm a pretty simple person. So I think the more we tighten this down, I mean, they're always looking over our shoulder, trying to infringe on our Second Amendment rights, and I think this strengthens so I'll rest there. Thank you.
Senator Crayco?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So just to follow up, I guess, a little bit with what the good attorney in the back of the room said is, yes, we all agree with the concept of the bill. We all want to make sure we're protecting the Second Amendment right granted to all of us. The problem is, and what we have to make sure we don't do, is create an issue where we are passing a law on top of a law that already has been passed, that does work, and create ambiguity within the statute. Because then you create a gray area. And then we make it easier for these companies that want to do this to do it, and then they have the argument when they go to the court, the statute's vague, it's gray. We were within the bounds of law, and we take more rights away sometimes in our attempt to protect them. And so I think we just need to be careful about that. If we're gonna pass a law out of this body, we need to make sure it's right, we need to make sure it's clear, and there aren't loopholes or gray areas within that, because we will do more harm than good, and I don't think any of us want to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of Senator French's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the favorable recommendation of House Bill 234, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Okay, I believe that House Bill 234 has passed the committee of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 40, oops, hang on. Sorry, didn't see you back there. Senator Nethercott. It's
Madam
the
Chair-
flowers, it's not because you're short. Just wanted to make that point.
I appreciate the encouragement. I'm growing as we speak. Madam Chairman, I move that the Senate rise and report. I'm sorry, Committee of the Whole.
Okay, you've heard the motion?
Includes the Senate.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Okay.
It's the Senate.
Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 264, do pass amended. House Bill 38, do pass. House Bill 316, engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 42, engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 64, engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 172, engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 234, do pass. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Senator Schuler,
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
you've all heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Committee of the Whole report has been adopted. Joint Conference Committee appointments. Okay. Joint Conference Committee for House Bill 11, Manufacturing Sales and Use Tax Exemption Amendments, will be McEwen Chair, Senators Ide and Case. Joint Conference Committee number 1 for House Bill 28, Commercial Driver's Licenses Revisions, will be Senator Anderson Chair, Senators Cooper and Kolb. Joint Conference Committee number 1, the Senate File 77, Compelled Speech is Not Free Speech, Senator Hutchings Chair, Senators Boner and Guru. Okay. Standing Committee reports.
Mr. President, the following reports are dated February 19, 2025. Committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 181, engrossed, funeral contracts, investment and bonding requirements. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Cooper, Jones, and Nethercott. Excused, Senator Robbins. Senator Anderson, Chairman. Committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 131, engrossed, ballot drop boxes prohibition. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Dockstader, and Steinmetz. No, Senators Case and Landon. Senator Case, Chairman. Committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 154, false voting amendments. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Dockstader, and Steinmetz. No, Senators Case and Landon. Senator Case, Chairman. Committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Joint Resolution 4, engrossed, Constitutional Amendment, Veterans Property Tax Exemption. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators French, Ide, and McEwen. No, Senators Case and Pappas. Senator McEwen, Chairman. Committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 289, Certificate of Need Repeal 3. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Crago, Crum, Hicks, Kolb, and Olson. Senator Crago, acting chairman. Committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 311, Exemption for Transported Fuel and Power Sales Amendments. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Hyde, McEwen, and Pappas. No, Senator Case. Senator McEwen, Chairman. Committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 134, engrossed, taxpayer funds, sexually explicit events prohibited 2. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Hyde, and McEwen. No, Senators Case and Pappas. Senator McEwen, Chairman. Committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 183, engrossed, net metering amendments. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Anderson, Cooper, Jones, and Nethercott. Excused, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Anderson, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. We are at that order of business of signing enrolled acts. Senate Enrolled Act number 8.
Senate Enrolled Act number 8, being original Senate File 49, Tangible Personal Property Index and Depreciation, an act relating to ad valorem taxation.
about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 8, being original Senate File 49. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 9.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 9, being original Senate File 13, Reading Assessment and Intervention Amendments, an act relating to reading assessment and intervention.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 9, which is Senate File 13. I'm so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 10.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 10, being original Senate File 78, Distribution of Unsolicited Absentee Ballot Request Forms, an act relating to elections.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 10, original Senate File 78. I've so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 11.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 11, being original Senate File 80, Abandonment of Water Rights Limitations, an act relating to water.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 11, being original Senate File 80. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 12.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 12, being original Senate File 131, Charter School Leasing, an act relating to K-12 school facilities.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 12, being original Senate File 131. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 13.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 13, being original Senate File 96, Wyoming Gold Act, an act relating to the Wyoming Legal Tender Act.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 13, being original Senate File 96. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 14.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 14, being original Senate File 73, Charter School Funding Amendments, an act relating to charter schools.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 14, being original Senate File 73. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 15.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 15, being original Senate File 81, Tax Exemption, Property Owned by the State, an act relating to taxation and revenue.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 15, being original Senate File 81. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Joint Resolution number 1. Enrolled.
Senate Enrolled Joint Resolution Number 1, being original Senate Joint Resolution 3, commemorating Nellie Taylor Ross. A joint resolution commemorating the 100th anniversary of Nellie Taylor Ross becoming the first woman to hold the office of governor in the United States.
I am about to sign Enrolled Joint Resolution number 1, being original Senate Joint Resolution 3. I have so signed. Okay. Any other messages or reports? All right. Madam Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move that we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Thursday, February 19th, 2025.
Thank you. Any announcements? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee will meet tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. in room 4 downstairs. That's the Wind River Room. And we're going to take up House Bill 211 engrossed hunting wildlife from vehicles. We're getting to that age where that's a good idea. And we'll continue that from Tuesday, Mr. President, and then we'll take up an important bill, House Bill 275, engrossed treatment of animals.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Any other announcements? Mr. Vice President.
Mr. President, the Senate Appropriations will be meeting on noon recess in room 113. We'll be taking up House Bill 117, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, House Bill 18, Career Technical Education Funding.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, you've all heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. The Senate will stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Thursday, February 20th.